but it's our achievements. It's just how great we could be that really scares us. And for you to get that vision for yourself of a life of meaning and a life of hope and a life of legacy, and what is this thing going to look like? Some of the best advice I ever had early on was John. I was 19 years old. I was sitting in a 4-door Ford station wagon, and we had just finished a 3-on-3 basketball competition. And Coach Stewart, he looks over at me, and I was kind of feeling it, man. I was kind of feeling the weight of the world. I just graduated high school. I had no clue who I was going to be. I had no clue what I was going to be when I was coming up and when I was growing up. And Coach Stewart said, look, John, there is nothing that you can do about right now. You can't do anything about your grades or GPA in junior college. You can't do anything about growing up with your grandmom. You can't do anything about not knowing your biological dad. You can't do anything about that. You can do everything about where you're going to be 5 years from now. And in that moment, man, I got a vision, I got a dream for my life. I saw something for me that no one else but me saw for me. And you have to get that vision for your life. You have to know, you have to identify what is that thing that keeps you awake at night, and you know you can do it. You see it there. How many of us will be those who live quiet lives of desperation, Thoreau said, and we go to the grave with our song still in us? How many of us will get to our tombstones, we'll get to our graves, and we'll have the ghost of possibilities and might-haves and would-haves and could-haves and what-ifs running around our headstone, saying, only if you would have acted, only if you would have believed. Just after the Stoneman Douglas tragedy, a while back, school shooting in South Florida, we had the opportunity to go in and to work with some students and to provide some counsel and just be there with them and spend the day with some students in a school. And as we were there was a young man sitting right up front. And the whole time he was tracking with me, man. I was on the floor with the kiddos that day. It was a high school. I was kind of going back and forth and up the aisles and stuff. And this young man was just tracking with me the whole time, man. And toward the end of the talk, I went up to him. I said, man, I had a handheld mic. I said, man, you got something to say, don't you? You have something to add to this conversation, don't you? He nodded his head, yeah. I do. And I gave him the mic. And the young man was very reluctant to take the microphone. And I just kind of held it to the side, and I was like, guys, I just need a minute. And I told that young man, I said, listen, before anyone in this room ever believes in you, you've got to believe in you. Before anyone else is ever going to be willing to go that mile with you, to follow your lead, to see that vision for their life like you've seen it for yours, you've got to believe in you. You've got to buy in to the big idea of you. And I handed that young man a mic. And he walked up. And he started going. And he started out a little wobbly. His voice was a little shaky. He was nervous. And then he said something that just sparked the crowd, and he juiced them, man, all of his friends and his peers that were there. And they stood up and started yelling and hollering and screaming for him. And then he got a little more confidence about himself. He had a success, right? He had a victory. And then he kept going. And man, they stood up and they were yelling and screaming and clapping. And this young man, in 2 seconds, had just gone from not even knowing if he could stand in front of a group of people to knocking it out of the park and getting not one but 2 standing ovations. What do you see for you? When you close your eyes at night, or when you think about that 18-year-old version of yourself, would he or she be proud of who you are today? Not an arrogant pride, not a cocky pride, none of that. But you know what? You did it. You're doing it. I'm proud of you. I'm proud I became you. I'm proud I'm on my way to something. And for you, a life that counts begins with not being pushed around by everybody else's idea of who you're supposed to be, but being true to that that's inside of you. It's been said in one place that eternity is scripted into the heart of every man. Vision is scripted into every one of us. What are you going to do with that? So guys, I want to wrap this up. What is a life that counts? A life that counts, one, you've got to take ownership. You've got to quit making excuses. You've got to quit pointing the finger. You've got to quit blame shifting. You have to take responsibility for everything in your life. No more putting off. No more pointing the finger. A life that counts is executing. A life that counts is realizing there's going to be some heavy lifting here. There's going to be some hard work here. There's going to be some mountains that I've got to climb here. There's going to be a learning curve here. There's going to be some things, man, that I've got to do. Bottom line. I've got to learn how to market my thing. I've got to learn how to push my thing. I've got to learn how to develop my thing. Whatever it is, you've got to figure out those systems and processes that makes your thing your thing. I've got to figure out copyrights or patents, or I've got to figure out Excel sheets, or I've got to figure out QuickBooks, whatever it is for you. And then thirdly, a life that counts is a life of vision. A life that counts is a life of vision. What is that ultimate give that after your time on this rock is done, you want to leave behind? What's that give that you want to leave behind? If you had the opportunity today to forecast your own obituary, what would it look like? All right, this is my favorite part of it. So before I bounce, I want to give you guys an opportunity. If you have any questions, let's do a little bit of Q&A. All right, we got one here.
Yes. Hey.
Stand up for me, boss.
Okay. Is this good?
Yeah, you're good. I hear you.
So with everything you face, you just mentioned, it's a lot of diversity, a lot of struggle,
All right.
a lot of other people that would have just stopped.
Yeah.
So what makes you different from me when I can just give up? And what made you not give up is my question, I guess.
Man, you know how many days out of 7 I wanted to give up along the way? Even when, so 6-7 years ago, there was even this time in my life where I was really overweight. I wore a size 54 in the waist. I was over 300 pounds, blacked out walking for 10, 20 minutes on a treadmill. Went to my doc. He's like, man, I got to put you on this, that, and the other. My triglycerides were 535. There were just so many times along the way where you're putting in the reps, right? Like you're executing those things. You're doing the things that you're supposed to do, because there's not really a manual to anything, right? And you're just trying to figure it out along the way, and you're saying, man, I really hope I'm going the right way. And so much of life is trial and error, and so much of life is experimenting. And by the way, you're the guinea pig, or your business or your body, if it's health and fitness or whatever, is the guinea pig that you're getting to experiment on. To be honest with you, you have to commit to yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing for people. You have to commit to yourself. You can't take, it's so big, it's so important. It's so important not to point the finger. It's so important. I could have, I've never met my biological father, therefore I'm going to grow up and be a jerk or whatever, because, right? How many people do that? I didn't want to do that. I wanted more for my life. So because I wanted more for my life, it's almost, I heard it put this way recently, it's almost like humble narcissism. A person who trains to be a doctor or physician, they train themselves for years and years. They rack up mountains of debt, or they try to figure out how to pay along the way for like medical school and that kind of thing, and they're working on themselves so that they can show up to serve others. And it's almost a false humility with people who say, you know what, I'm going to serve, but I'm not practicing any self-care. I'm not investing in me. I'm not growing. I'm not gaining utility. I'm not gaining any real skill of value that I can serve the world around me. It's almost a fake humility that says I'm going to show up to serve when in fact I have nothing to give. So you have to be willing to invest in you. Like you have to be willing to, you're eating family Thanksgiving and the pie goes around, just as an illustration, and as bad as you want some pecan pie, for a couple of years, for a couple of Thanksgivings, you got to be willing to make everybody else feel a little guilty for indulging on some pecan pie when you're pushing it away, right? So you have to invest those hours and hours and hours into yourself so that you can have something, or into your craft, into your skill, so that you in turn can have something to give. And I think those small successes along the way, they're useful, they help, but the biggest thing is man, you just got to resolve, brother. You got to resolve that I'm going to put up and I'm going to do it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is your resolve. Being resilient. All right, go for it. What you got?
So it's nice to hear your story. It's really encouraging, and you elaborated a lot on this. But I just wanted to know more about your phrase, I am. What does that mean?
Yeah, this is actually a phrase coming from the South in a very religious culture. This is a phrase that I've caught a lot of heat off of, so I appreciate you asking the question. What is I am about? So for me, I am is whatever obstacle, whatever challenge, whatever it is in the way, fill in the blank. I am, I can, I will overcome, I will become. I am the person that I need to be to take care of the task, to whatever it is in my life, in my world, I will become. I am the person that will find an answer to those questions, right? Anyone can point toward problems. Anyone can find issues. Anyone can find fault with others. Anyone can find faults with systems and processes. That's not what a life that counts is about. For me, a life that counts is a life that says, I will become, I am going to be the answer to the question. Man, I know it's almost like cheesy coffee cup material, but I will be the change. I am the change that I want to see in the world. Does that mean I do everything perfect and exact and I'm always spot on? No, but I'm aiming for it. I'm aiming to be that. I'm aiming to become that. There's always room for improvement for me as an organizational or business leader. There's always room for improvement for me as a husband. There's always room for improvement for me as a father. The big idea is, for me, I am going to close the gap on that vision that I have for myself as a business leader, father, husband, every other area of life. I am going to close the gap on where I am now and what I see for me in the future. So I'm not nearly as good as I'm not nearly as bad as I was 10 years ago, but I'm not nearly as good as I'm going to be in the next 10. Does that help answer your question a little bit? Yep. Not trying to disrespect God, but I am a person of faith, and I do believe that as a person of faith, we are supposed to be those people. Man, if you're breathing, you're supposed to be one of those people who finds a way to close the gap of excellence in your own life. All right, next question. What do you got?
Yeah, so I'm just curious, how much can you bench?
Oh my God.
Okay.
So I get that question a lot from high school kids, and I'll answer the same way that I answer for them. I just do 225 for reps these days. That's about as much as I want to say about that.
Do you miss the gym as much as I do?
I miss the gym a lot. All right, guys, anybody else? Anything else? All right, my man, what you got? Talk to me. What's your question?
All right, so I understand that a life that counts is different per person, and what you want to become different per person. But what if what you want is everything that your family, friends, and those around you are telling you not to do? Everyone is saying don't do it.
Well, we have to have a little understanding with one another first, right? Like, is it illegal? Is it unethical? Is it like immoral for you? Like, what in your code of fabric?
It's just different and
Okay.
not like everyone else.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm the first person in my family to graduate from high school. I'm the first person in my family to finish, like, to go and graduate from college, like not 1 degree but more, right? I'm the first one in my family to stay married and happily married for like a significant period of time. You know what I mean? So like some families have black sheep, my family has white sheep, right? And so I get that, I feel that. And again, that's where if you're always measuring yourself, it was Jim Rohn who said it really well. He said, you're going to be the average of the 5 closest people around you. So if you're given a lot of room, if you're holding space for people in your life who are doing something, going somewhere that you don't want to go, right? Follow me? You're probably going to end up going with those people. You're probably going to be in the same economic, like, tax bracket that they're in. You're probably going to live in a similar size house as they live. Like, your income's probably going to look like their income. Your family's going to probably look a little bit like their income. Right? Law of attraction, we attract what we typically are. But if you're aiming for more, like if you're trying to become more, right, then you're going to begin attracting different types of people, and you're going to begin becoming a different type of person yourself that attracts something altogether different. Yeah, there's going to be a period in your life where you're going to have to really stand firm on who you're becoming, even though you're not there yet. And you may even have to sever some really important, or what you feel like to be very important ties in your life, at least to some level. Like, I love my mama. I have zero ill will whatsoever for my mama. But my mama cannot balance a checkbook to save her life. And I wish she would listen to me sometimes, and I wish she would let me help and that sort of thing. But I can't exert that energy or that headspace, or I had to extend love for my mom. She grew up in a different space. Mad respect for my mom, because she went to work. She worked 60, 70, 80, 90 hours a week during the Persian Gulf conflict, like setting pins and grenades to make ends meet for me and my kid brother. Mad respect for, she's always done what's had to be done. But as far as some other areas and aspects of her life, I can't, in order for me to get to where I need to be, I can't pattern my life around that. I'm not going to take all of the advice my mom has to offer, nor, as a grown man, I'm not going to sit around the dinner table, and if she decides to chime in on something, I'm not going to try to argue with her, right? That's a relationship that I value. So see, I think some people here, and I really want to caution you, because what I think I hear you say is maybe there's family in my life and I want to do things for me differently than maybe some of those really close relationships in my life. I think that's what I'm hearing you say. Is that correct? Okay. So here's where we have to be cautious. So be cautious because you're emerging and growing and changing. You got to remember, all ships rise with high tide. All ships rise with high tide. I think sometimes we miss it in a self-help culture. I think sometimes we really miss it in a motivational headspace when we're making leaps and bounds of progress, but those closest relationships, like my wife, my kids, like if those relationships aren't elevated to another level, does that make sense? Then am I really growing? If I can't love my mom, like just love my mom for who she is, for all of her, perceived shortcomings or misfires or whatever, like if I have to get caught up in an unhealthy headspace with her because we may disagree on something that, is a huge deal to her but may not be to me, right? Then am I really growing? And I would say no. I would say you're not really growing. I'd say you're probably just becoming more self-consumed and more narcissistic. And it's not a humble narcissism. It's an arrogant narcissism. And there's no space There's no space in the economy. There's no space in the workforce. There's no space whatsoever in the world today for an arrogant narcissism. So I would encourage us to practice humility and focus. And if you have to define focus as narcissism, I get it. But man, show up with kindness, love, show compassion, be considerate, right? You've got to work on those principles first. You may be amazing at like whatever your thing is, and that's good. But I would really encourage you, how can you be amazing and kind? How can you crush it as a developer? How can you crush it as a marketeer and be compassionate and be considerate of those really valuable relationships in your life? Does that help?